To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, welcome and thank you. Your presence makes these stories worth sharing. We'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation. The mahogany desk gleamed under the soft lighting of the corner office as Roland Ashford signed the final papers. At 42, he had built himself from nothing into something formidable. A self-made millionaire who understood that power wasn't just about money, it was about control. The acquisition of Meridian Industries had taken 3 years of careful planning, strategic investments through shell companies, and patience that would have broken lesser men. "Congratulations, Mr. Ashford," said his lawyer, Patricia Wells, sliding the documents into her briefcase. "You now own 68% of Meridian Industries. The remaining shareholders don't even know who bought out the previous majority holder." Roland nodded, his steel-gray eyes reflecting satisfaction. "Perfect. And the employment contracts? All executive positions serve at will. You can terminate anyone without cause, effective immediately." This wasn't just business. This was personal. Roland had grown up in the foster system after his parents died in a car crash when he was 8. He'd learned early that loyalty was rare and betrayal was common. By 15, he was already working construction jobs, lying about his age. By 25, he'd started his first company with money saved from years of 18-hour days. By 35, he'd sold it for $50 million. That's when he met Cassandra. Cassandra Holloway had been working as an event coordinator for the luxury hotel where Roland's company held its acquisition celebration. She was 28, stunning, with auburn hair and emerald eyes that seemed to see right through him. For the first time in his life, Roland thought he'd found someone who understood his drive, his hunger for success. Their courtship was swift and intense. Cassandra claimed to admire his ambition, his rise from nothing. She said she wanted to build something together. They married within a year, and for 7 years, Roland thought he'd finally found someone who wouldn't betray him. He was wrong. The sign started 6 months ago. Late meetings that couldn't be verified. New jewelry she claimed to have bought herself, despite not working since their 3rd anniversary. Phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered the room. Roland had survived the foster system, the streets, and cutthroat business deals by paying attention to details others missed. So he hired a private investigator. The photos were devastating. Cassandra wrapped in the arms of Trevor Blackstone, Chief Operations Officer of Meridian Industries. The same Trevor who had been Roland's fraternity brother at State University, the one person from his past he'd maintained contact with over the years. They'd grab drinks monthly. Trevor had been a groomsman at Roland's wedding, and Roland had helped him land the COO position at Meridian 3 years ago with a glowing recommendation. The betrayal cut deeper than Roland had thought possible. Not just his wife, but his oldest friend. The investigation revealed they'd been together for over a year, meeting in expensive hotels charged to Meridian's corporate account. Trevor had been telling Cassandra details about Roland's business dealings, using inside information to appear impressive and worldly. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came in the recording his investigator had obtained, Cassandra and Trevor planning Roland's downfall. Trevor had discovered Roland's shell company investments in Meridian and planned to expose them to the board, claiming conflict of interest. They wanted Roland's reputation destroyed so Cassandra could divorce him and take half his assets while Trevor climbed the corporate ladder. "He's so paranoid about betrayal," Cassandra had laughed on the recording. If only he knew his biggest fear was coming true right under his nose. Roland had listened to that recording 3 times before making his decision. Some people forgave. Some people forgot. Roland didn't either. Now, staring out at the Seattle skyline from his new office in the Meridian building, Roland allowed himself a cold smile. Trevor had no idea that his plan to expose Roland had actually accelerated Roland's timeline for the acquisition. The shell companies Trevor thought he'd discovered were decoys. Roland had 6 others that had been steadily buying Meridian stock for 2 years. His phone buzzed. "Cassandra. Hey honey, running late tonight. Big project at the community center." Another lie. His investigator had confirmed she'd be at the 4 Seasons with Trevor until at least midnight. "No problem. Take your time. Love you," she said, the words dripping with false sincerity. "I know exactly how much," Roland replied, hanging up. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow, he would begin collecting what was owed. Chapter 2. The Christmas Gift. The Christmas Eve snow fell softly outside their Queen and mansion as Roland sat in his study, reviewing the final details of his plan. At exactly 6 p.m., Cassandra would return home from her community center project, actually a romantic dinner with Trevor at Chez Laurent. She'd shower, change into the red dress she thought he hadn't noticed was new, and prepare to give him his Christmas gift. Roland had prepared a gift of his own. His phone rang. Miranda Foster, his head of security and the only person who knew the full scope of his plan. "Everything's in place," she said. Miranda was ex-military, had served 2 tours overseas before becoming a private investigator. Roland had hired her 5 years ago after she'd exposed a competitor's industrial espionage. "The recording equipment is installed in your home office. The cameras in the living room are active. Trevor's resignation letter is drafted and ready to be filed with HR the moment you give the word." "And the other matter?" Dr. Henley confirmed the timeline. "The medical issue we discussed will manifest naturally within 48 hours of exposure. Completely untraceable. Looks like stress-induced symptoms. He'll be incapacitated for several weeks minimum." Roland smiled grimly. Dr. Henley owed Roland a significant favor. Roland had quietly paid for the doctor's daughter's experimental cancer treatment last year when insurance wouldn't cover it. Sometimes investments in people paid dividends in unexpected ways. "Perfect. And Lisa? She's prepared to testify about the harassment whenever you need her to." Lisa Chen worked in Meridian's accounting department. Trevor had been pursuing her aggressively for months, using his position to create uncomfortable situations. She'd been afraid to report it until Miranda approached her last week, offering both protection and justice. The front door opened. Roland checked his watch. 6:03 p.m. Cassandra was running late, probably because she'd spent extra time saying goodbye to Trevor. "Roland." Her voice carried through the house, artificially bright. "I'm home." He found her in the kitchen, hanging up her coat. Her hair was slightly mussed despite the lack of wind outside, and her lipstick had been reapplied recently, but imperfectly. 7 years of marriage had taught him to read these signs. "How was the community center?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Oh, you know, the usual drama. Mrs. Patterson thinks the Christmas decoration budget is too extravagant." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly that Roland almost admired her skill. "Poor baby. You must be exhausted." "Actually, I feel energized. The holidays always do that to me." She turned in his arms, smiling up at him. For a moment, he could see the woman he'd fallen in love with, and he felt a flicker of something that might have been regret. Then he remembered the recording of her laughing about his paranoia. "I have something special planned for tonight," she said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "But first, let me shower and change." "Take your time. I'll be in my study." An hour later, Cassandra appeared in the doorway wearing the red dress, silk, expensive, definitely not purchased with her allowance. She held a small wrapped box in her hands. "Merry Christmas, darling," she said, settling onto the leather sofa across from his desk. Roland accepted the gift, noting how her hands trembled slightly. Nerves or excitement about what she thought was coming. Inside the box was a money clip, sterling silver, engraved with his initials. Tasteful, personal, and costing exactly the amount he'd expect from someone trying to appear thoughtful without spending real money. "It's beautiful," he said. "Thank you." "Open it," she said, practically bouncing with anticipation. Inside the money clip was a single $5 bill. "I know it seems strange," Cassandra said, her voice taking on a tone he'd never heard before. Cruel, almost mocking. "But I thought you should have something to remember your failures by." Roland's blood went cold, but he kept his expression neutral. "I'm not sure I understand." "Oh, I think you do." She stood up, pacing to the window. "You think you're so smart, so successful. But you're nothing, Roland. A foster kid who got lucky and thinks he deserves respect." "Cassandra, did you really think I didn't know about your pathetic little spy games? Hiring investigators to follow me? I've known for months." She spun around, her face transformed by malice. "Trevor told me you'd probably figure it out eventually. You're so paranoid about betrayal because deep down, you know you're not worth being loyal to." Roland felt something cold and final settle in his chest. This wasn't the woman he'd married. This was someone who had been wearing a mask for 7 years and had finally decided to remove it. "You see, darling," she continued, moving closer to his desk, "Trevor is about to be promoted to CEO, of Meridian. He's been documenting your little shell company scheme for months. By New Year's, your reputation will be destroyed, and I'll file for divorce. I'll take half of everything you have, and you'll be left with exactly what you deserve, nothing. She picked up the $5 bill from his desk and threw it at him. Buy yourself dinner. Failure. My lover is CEO of your company. You'll be fired soon. The bill fluttered to the floor between them. Roland bent slowly to pick it up, his mind racing through calculations and adjustments to his plan. She'd accelerated his timeline, but that was fine. He'd been prepared for variables. You have nothing to say? Cassandra demanded. No begging, no anger. Roland stood, smoothing the $5 bill between his fingers. Actually, I do have something to say. He walked to his desk and pressed a button on his phone. Miranda, please come up. What? Who is Miranda? Cassandra's confidence flickered for the first time. My head of security. She's been documenting everything for the past 20 minutes. Roland gestured to the nearly invisible cameras Miranda had installed. But more importantly, she's the one who's going to escort you to the guest bedroom, where you'll be staying until our lawyers can arrange a more permanent separation. The door opened and Miranda entered, tall, composed, with the bearing of someone accustomed to handling dangerous situations. Mrs. Ashford, Miranda said politely, if you'll come with me. You can't do this. Cassandra's voice rose to a shriek. You can't keep me prisoner in my own house. It's not your house, Roland said quietly. It's mine. Purchased before our marriage. Never added your name to the deed. You're a guest who's overstayed her welcome. Trevor will. Trevor will what? Come rescue you. Roland smiled for the first time since she'd entered the room. I'm afraid Trevor is going to be quite busy tomorrow. You see, he's just been promoted to unemployed. Cassandra's face went white. What are you talking about? I bought Meridian Industries last week. 68% ownership. Trevor serves at my discretion, and as of tomorrow morning, I no longer require his services. The color drained completely from Cassandra's face as the implications hit her. That's impossible. He would have known. He knew what I wanted him to know. Just like you've known what I wanted you to know. Roland walked around his desk, stopping inches from her. You made one critical error, Cassandra. You assumed I was the same person you met 7 years ago. Someone who could be blindsided. Someone who didn't prepare for betrayal. You can't. This is illegal. Nothing I've done is illegal. I bought a company. I fired an employee. I asked my wife to leave my house after she threw money at me and called me a failure. Roland's voice was completely calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. The question is, what have you and Trevor done that might be illegal? Corporate espionage, perhaps? Theft of confidential information? We'll find out. Miranda stepped forward. Ma'am, your bags are packed and in the guest room. You have 15 minutes to collect any personal items you can't live without. Everything else will be inventoried and returned through your attorney. As Miranda escorted a stunned Cassandra from the room, Roland's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. What did you do? She's not answering her phone. What did you do? Roland smiled and typed back. Hello, Trevor. We need to talk. Chapter 3, The Reckoning. Christmas morning dawned gray and cold as Roland walked through the empty halls of Meridian Industries. The building was deserted except for security, giving him the privacy he needed for what came next. His footsteps echoed off the polished floors as he made his way to Trevor's corner office. Trevor was already there, slumped in his chair with his head in his hands. At 43, he looked older, stress lines carved deep around his eyes, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. When he looked up at Roland, his face was a mixture of desperation and disbelief. 7 years, Trevor said, his voice hoarse. 7 years you've been planning this. Actually, only 2, Roland replied, settling into the chair across from Trevor's desk. The first 5 years, I trusted you. Fascinating how quickly things can change when you discover who people really are. Trevor's hands shook as he reached for a coffee mug that was already empty. How long have you known? About you and Cassandra? 6 months. About your plan to destroy me? 3 months. About the fact that you've been systematically undermining my other business relationships while positioning yourself as my successor? 18 months. The color drained from Trevor's face. What are you talking about? Roland pulled out a thick folder and set it on the desk between them. Miranda is very thorough. Did you really think your conversations with Harrison McBride about my instability wouldn't get back to me? Or your suggestions to the Yamamoto group that I was overextended and unreliable? Trevor's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Harrison McBride ran the largest construction firm in the Pacific Northwest, a key partner in several of Roland's projects. The Yamamoto Group controlled crucial shipping contracts for Roland's import business. You've been systematically poisoning my professional relationships for over a year, Roland continued, setting yourself up as the stable alternative when I inevitably fell. You weren't just betraying me personally, Trevor. You were destroying my livelihood. Roland, listen. I'm not finished. Roland's voice cut through Trevor's protests like a blade. 3 days ago, you called Senator Williams's office and suggested they investigate my campaign contributions for irregularities. Yesterday, you contacted the state licensing board with concerns about my construction permits. Trevor's face went ashen. How could you possibly know that? Because Senator Williams is a friend, and the licensing board chairman plays golf with my attorney. They called me directly. Roland leaned forward. You weren't content to steal my wife, Trevor. You wanted to destroy everything I'd built. Make me dependent on you for survival. That's not. I never meant. What you meant is irrelevant. What you did is fact. Roland opened the folder and spread out photographs. Bank records showing suspicious transfers from accounts you control to competitors bidding against my projects. Phone records documenting your coordination with my rivals. Email trails proving you've been sharing confidential information about my strategies and financial positions. Trevor stared at the evidence, his hands trembling visibly now. You can't prove criminal intent. I don't need to prove criminal intent. I just need to destroy you. Roland's voice was completely calm, which made it infinitely more menacing. You see, Trevor, you made the same mistake Cassandra did. You assumed I was someone who could be manipulated, controlled, eliminated. You forgot that I survived things that would have broken you before I was 15 years old. Roland stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. Let me tell you what's going to happen. In approximately 30 minutes, security will escort you from this building. Your corporate credit cards have been canceled, your company car has been repossessed, and your stock options have been forfeited due to violation of your ethics clause. You can't. I'm not finished. Roland turned back to face him. Your apartment lease was guaranteed by Meridian Industries. That guarantee has been revoked, effective immediately. Your membership at the country club was a corporate benefit, also revoked. The loan for your Porsche was co-signed by the company. We've called it in. Trevor's face was now completely white. Roland, please. The medical insurance that covers your mother's cancer treatments? Corporate benefit. The private school tuition for your daughter that you couldn't afford on your salary? Corporate scholarship program. Roland smiled coldly. Guess what happens to those? You son of a bitch. Trevor lunged to his feet. You can't punish my family for what? For your betrayal? For your attempt to destroy my life? Roland didn't move, didn't flinch. Your family will be fine, Trevor, if you cooperate. Trevor stopped mid-step. What do you mean? Sit down. Trevor sank back into his chair, his fight deflated. You're going to return every cent you received from selling information about my business to competitors. You're going to provide a detailed confession of every action you took against me, including names, dates, and methods. You're going to publicly apologize to every person and organization you contacted about me, explaining that your accusations were false and motivated by personal animosity. And if I do all that, then I won't pursue criminal charges for corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and conspiracy. Your mother will keep her insurance through Cobra. Your daughter will finish the school year on scholarship. You'll have 90 days to find new employment before I start making calls to ensure you never work in this industry again. Trevor's hands covered his face. How did you become so cruel? I learned from the best, Roland replied. Life taught me that mercy is weakness, and weakness invites more betrayal. You and Cassandra taught me that even love doesn't prevent people from trying to destroy you. The office door opened and Miranda entered, followed by 2 security guards. Mr. Blackstone, she said formally, you have 10 minutes to collect personal items from your office. Corporate property remains here. As the security guards flanked Trevor, Roland's phone rang. Cassandra's number. Where is he? She demanded before Roland could speak. Trevor's not answering his phone. He's not at his apartment. He's right here, Roland said calmly. Would you like to speak with him? He handed the phone to Trevor. Cass, listen to me. He owns the company. He fired me. The apartment's gone. The car's gone. Everything's gone. Trevor's voice cracked. We're finished. Roland could hear Cassandra screaming through the phone, but Trevor just stared at the device before handing it back. She hung up, Trevor said quietly. Of course she did. You're no longer useful to her. Roland slipped the phone into his pocket. Let this be a lesson, Trevor. The people who help you betray others will eventually betray you too. As security escorted Trevor from the office, Miranda handed Roland another folder. The additional items you requested, she said. Dr. Henley's report on Trevor's stress-induced condition should manifest within 48 hours. Lisa Chen's harassment complaint has been filed with HR and the police. The private investigator's photos of Trevor and Mrs. Ashford have been sent to Trevor's ex-wife's attorney. She's requested an emergency hearing to modify his custody arrangement. Roland nodded, feeling the pieces fall into place with satisfying precision. And Cassandra? She's been calling the house every hour since last night. When she couldn't reach Trevor, she tried to return home. The locks have been changed, and security has instructions not to admit her. Her attorney called this morning. Apparently, she wants to negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. The prenup is ironclad. She gets nothing. She claims you can't enforce it because you concealed assets. Roland smiled grimly. The assets I concealed were acquired after her betrayal began. The timeline will show that my acquisition of Meridian was a direct response to discovering her affair. Any judge will see it as protective action, not deception. As they walked through the empty building toward the elevator, Roland felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness. He wasn't sure he'd ever feel that again, but the calm satisfaction of justice served. What's next? Miranda asked. Now we wait, Roland said. Trevor will confess because he has no choice. Cassandra will try to fight the prenup and lose. And I will rebuild my life without the burden of people I thought I could trust. The elevator doors closed, and Roland saw his reflection in the polished steel. Older, harder, but unbroken. Some people learn to forgive. Some people learn to forget. Roland had learned to survive. Chapter 4. The Unraveling. 2 weeks into the new year, Roland's phone rang at 3 a.m. Dr. Henley's voice was grim but professional. It's done. Trevor Blackstone was admitted to Swedish Medical Center 3 hours ago. Stress-induced cardiac episode, just as we discussed. He'll be incapacitated for at least 6 weeks, possibly longer. Roland sat up in his empty king-sized bed, the massive house feeling even more hollow in the darkness. Complications? None that will arouse suspicion. His medical history supports the diagnosis: high-stress job, recent life upheavals, poor diet and sleep patterns. The attending physician accepted my consultation notes without question. After hanging up, Roland walked to his study and opened the secure laptop that contained his real plans, the ones even Miranda didn't know about in their entirety. Trevor's medical crisis was just the beginning. Phase 2 required more delicate timing. The investigation into Trevor's harassment of Lisa Chen had already yielded results. 2 other women from Meridian had come forward with similar stories, and the police were building a pattern of behavior case. Trevor's ex-wife had successfully modified their custody agreement, citing his recent instability and questionable judgment. Their 12-year-old daughter would now see him only under supervised visitation. But Roland wasn't finished with Trevor yet. At 9 a.m., Roland walked into the law offices of Klein, Morrison & Associates. David Klein had been representing Roland for 15 years, through 3 major acquisitions and countless smaller legal battles. He was a thin, sharp-eyed man who understood that winning sometimes required creativity. The Blackstone matter, Klein said without preamble, sliding a folder across his mahogany desk. It's more complex than you initially indicated. How so? Your friend has been busy. The corporate espionage case we discussed? It goes back 3 years, not 1. He's been systematically selling information about your business operations to at least 6 different competitors. The financial damage could exceed $40 million. Roland felt something cold settle in his stomach. $40 million? The Yamamoto shipping contract alone was worth $12 million over 5 years. Your construction permits, the delays caused by his sabotage, cost you $8 million in overruns and penalties. The Harrison McBride situation prevented you from bidding on the waterfront development project. Klein leaned back in his chair. Trevor Blackstone didn't just betray you personally, Roland. He orchestrated a systematic destruction of your business empire. Can we prove it in court? With what you've given me? Absolutely. But here's where it gets interesting. Klein opened another file. Trevor's been doing this to others too. We've identified at least 3 other executives in similar positions who've suffered mysterious setbacks that coincide with Trevor's involvement in their companies. Roland's mind raced through the implications. He's a professional saboteur. More than that, we think he's part of a larger network. The money he received for selling your information? It didn't go into his personal accounts. It went into an investment fund controlled by Hamilton Shaw. Roland knew that name. Hamilton Shaw ran the largest private equity firm in the Pacific Northwest, a firm that specialized in acquiring distressed companies at below-market prices. He's been creating the distress, Roland said quietly. Exactly. Find a successful company, place someone inside to destabilize it, then swoop in with a lowball acquisition offer when the company's desperate. Klein smiled grimly. The beautiful part is that it's all technically legal. Industrial espionage is hard to prove, and even when it's proven, the penalties are usually civil, not criminal. Usually. Well, that's where things get interesting for Mr. Blackstone. Klein pulled out another document. You see, 3 months ago, Congress passed new legislation expanding the definition of economic terrorism. Systematic sabotage of multiple companies' operations, especially when it affects national security contracts, can now be prosecuted as federal crimes. Roland leaned forward. National security? Your construction company held contracts for 2 military installations. The delays Trevor caused affected national defense projects. That makes him vulnerable to federal prosecution under the new statutes. What kind of penalties are we talking about? 25 years to life. Roland felt a smile tug at the corners of his mouth. I see. And if someone were to provide evidence of this pattern to federal authorities, the FBI would be very interested, especially if that someone had been personally damaged by the conspiracy and could provide inside information about how the network operates. That afternoon, Roland drove to the federal building in downtown Seattle. Agent Sarah Crawford of the FBI's white-collar crime unit was younger than he'd expected, mid-30s, with intelligent brown eyes and the bearing of someone accustomed to dealing with complex financial crimes. Mr. Ashford, she said, gesturing to a chair in her sterile office. Your attorney said you have information about a multi-company conspiracy. Roland opened his briefcase and began laying out documents. Bank records, phone logs, email trails, recorded conversations. 3 years of evidence that painted a picture of systematic corporate sabotage. This is Trevor Blackstone, he said, sliding a photograph across her desk. He's been working as an inside agent for Hamilton Shaw's investment firm. His job is to destabilize target companies from within, making them vulnerable to below-market acquisitions. Agent Crawford studied the documents with the careful attention of someone who understood financial crime. These companies, Meridian Industries, Coastal Construction, Pacific Shipping, they're all currently owned by Shaw's fund. Acquired at significant discounts after experiencing mysterious setbacks that coincided with Trevor's employment there. And you can prove Mr. Blackstone was responsible for these setbacks? Roland smiled. I can prove he was responsible for mine. I suspect the others will become obvious once you start looking. They talked for 2 hours. By the end, Agent Crawford had committed to opening a federal investigation into Shaw's investment practices and Trevor's role in the conspiracy. There's one thing I should mention, Roland said as he prepared to leave. Trevor is currently hospitalized with stress-related heart problems. He might be more cooperative with federal investigators than he would be under normal circumstances. I see. And when might be a good time to approach him? I'd suggest soon, before he recovers enough to contact his lawyers. That evening, Roland returned to his empty mansion and poured himself a glass of 30-year-old Macallan. His phone showed 7 missed calls from Cassandra and 3 from numbers he didn't recognize. He deleted them all without listening. At 9 p.m., Miranda called with an update. Trevor's been moved to a private room. Hospital security confirmed he has no visitors except for his ex-wife and daughter. His lawyer tried to see him, but Trevor refused the meeting. Interesting. And Cassandra? Still staying at the Four Seasons. She's burned through most of her available credit cards. Her attorney is pushing for an emergency hearing on the prenup, but the earliest court date is 6 weeks out. Good. Let her financial pressure build. Desperation makes people careless. There's something else, Miranda said. Lisa Chin received an interesting phone call today. Someone claiming to represent Trevor, asking her to reconsider her harassment complaint, offering her money to make it go away. Roland frowned. Trevor's in the hospital. Exactly. Which means someone else is trying to clean up his mess. Someone with access to significant funds. Hamilton Shaw. That would be my guess. They're starting to realize their network has been exposed. Roland set down his glass and walked to the window overlooking Elliott Bay. The lights of the city stretched out before him, each one representing someone's dreams, ambitions, betrayals. For 34 years, he believed that success was about building something lasting. Now he understood that success was about surviving long enough to see your enemies destroy themselves. Miranda, he said quietly, tomorrow, I want you to start documenting everything Shaw's people do to interfere with the federal investigation. Every contact they make, every offer they extend, every pressure they apply. Planning to expand the case? Planning to make sure they join Trevor in federal prison. As Roland ended the call, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Tonight. HS. Hamilton Shaw himself. Roland smiled and typed back, I don't negotiate with criminals. The response came immediately. Your wife says otherwise. Roland's blood turned to ice. He called Miranda immediately. Where's Cassandra right now? I'll check with the surveillance team. The line went quiet for several seconds. Roland, she's not at the hotel. Her credit card shows charges at a restaurant in Bellevue 2 hours ago, but there's been no activity since then. Find her, Roland said, his voice deadly calm. Find her now. Chapter 5, The Counterstrike. Hamilton Shaw's office occupied the top floor of the Columbia Center, the tallest building in Seattle. At 62, Shaw was a shark in an expensive suit, silver-haired, cold-eyed, with the bearing of a man accustomed to making problems disappear. Roland arrived at midnight, as Shaw had insisted, walking through the empty lobby to a private elevator that took him directly to the penthouse. Shaw stood behind a wall of windows overlooking the city, his hands clasped behind his back. Mr. Ashford, thank you for coming. Where is she? Safe. For now. Shaw turned, revealing a face that might have been handsome once, but had been hardened by decades of calculated cruelty. Please sit. We have much to discuss. Roland remained standing. You have 30 seconds before I call the FBI. The FBI? Shaw laughed, a sound like grinding glass. Agent Crawford? Yes, she's very thorough. Unfortunately, she's also very ambitious. Did you know she's being considered for promotion to the Financial Crimes Task Force in Washington? Such promotions can be influenced by the right connections. You're threatening a federal agent? I'm explaining reality. Shaw moved to his desk and opened a laptop. Let me show you something. The screen displayed a live video feed from what appeared to be a warehouse. Cassandra sat in a chair in the center of an empty room, her hands zip-tied behind her back. She appeared unharmed but terrified. She's quite beautiful, Shaw said conversationally. I can see why Trevor was so smitten. Such a shame about their relationship ending so badly. Roland's hands clenched into fists. What do you want? Your cooperation. You see, Mr. Ashford, you've created a problem for me. Trevor was an important asset, and his exposure threatens my entire operation. I need that exposure to disappear. The FBI already has the evidence. Evidence can be discredited. Witnesses can recant their testimony. Federal investigations can be redirected to less threatening targets. Shaw closed the laptop. But I need your help to make that happen. I won't help you. Oh, I think you will. Shaw pressed a button on his desk, and the office door opened. 2 large men in dark suits entered, taking positions on either side of Roland. You see, your wife has become quite talkative since our associates collected her. She's told us some fascinating things about your business practices. Roland felt ice in his veins, such as the shell companies you used to acquire Meridian Industries, the investigation you hired to spy on her and Trevor, the mysterious illness that befell Trevor just days after he was fired. Shaw smiled coldly. Your wife believes you're capable of far more than the FBI suspects. She's lying. Perhaps. But federal investigators might find her allegations compelling enough to expand their inquiry. How would your other business holdings fare under that level of scrutiny? Roland calculated rapidly. Shaw was right. A federal investigation into Roland's business empire would expose practices that, while legal, would destroy his reputation and several profitable operations. What do you want me to do? Simple. You're going to call Agent Crawford and tell her you've reconsidered your allegations against Trevor. You're going to explain that your evidence was taken out of context, that you were acting out of personal animosity rather than legitimate concern about criminal activity. And if I refuse? Shaw gestured toward the laptop. Your wife suffers the consequences. And then you'll face federal charges for conspiracy, witness intimidation, and possibly accessory to whatever happens to Trevor in the hospital. Roland stared at the screen showing Cassandra's terrified face. The woman who had betrayed him, humiliated him, tried to destroy him. The woman who had thrown $5 at him and called him a failure. How do I know you'll release her if I cooperate? You don't. But you know what will happen if you don't. Roland pulled out his phone and stared at Agent Crawford's number. Every instinct screamed at him not to make this call, not to let Shaw win. But looking at Cassandra's face on the screen, he felt something he hadn't expected: responsibility. She had betrayed him, but she was still his wife. And despite everything, some part of him couldn't let her die for her mistakes. He started to dial. Wait, Shaw said, holding up a hand. There's one more thing. Trevor needs to disappear permanently. Heart attack, medical complications, tragic but not suspicious. Dr. Henley has been very cooperative so far, but we need to ensure his continued silence. You want me to kill Trevor? I want you to ensure he can never testify against my organization. How you accomplish that is up to you. Roland's finger hovered over the call button. In that moment, he understood that Shaw had made a critical error. The man was so accustomed to controlling people through fear and manipulation that he'd forgotten a basic truth. Cornering a dangerous animal didn't make it helpless, it made it desperate. And Roland had learned long ago that desperate men were capable of anything. All right, Roland said quietly. I'll make the call. He dialed Agent Crawford's number. When she answered, her voice was alert despite the late hour. Agent Crawford? This is Roland Ashford. I need to see you immediately. There's been a development in the Blackstone case. What kind of development? The kind that changes everything. Can you meet me at your office in an hour? Shaw smiled triumphantly as Roland ended the call. Excellent. Now, about Trevor. Already handled, Roland said. Dr. Henley has been very cooperative, as you mentioned. Good. And you understand that your wife's safety depends on your continued cooperation. Completely. Shaw gestured to his security men, who stepped aside to let Roland pass. I'm glad we could reach an understanding, Mr. Ashford. I look forward to a long and profitable relationship. As Roland walked toward the elevator, he allowed himself a cold smile. Hamilton Shaw was about to learn the difference between fear and fury, between controlling someone and awakening something that should have been left alone. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Chapter 6: The Perfect Storm. Agent Crawford's office was busy despite the late hour, FBI personnel working in shifts to maintain surveillance on ongoing operations. Roland arrived exactly 60 minutes after his call, carrying a briefcase and wearing an expression of grim determination. Mr. Ashford, Crawford said, gesturing him into her office. You said there was a development? Hamilton Shaw kidnapped my wife 3 hours ago. Crawford's eyes sharpened immediately. Explain. Roland opened his briefcase and pulled out his phone, showing her the recording app he'd activated during his meeting with Shaw. Everything we discussed was recorded. Shaw has Cassandra in an undisclosed location and is demanding I recant my testimony against Trevor Blackstone in exchange for her safety. You recorded your conversation with Shaw? I've been recording everything since this began. Roland smiled grimly. Survival instinct. Crawford listened to the entire 40-minute recording, her expression growing darker with each revelation. Shaw's threats against a federal agent, his admission of running a criminal conspiracy, his demand that Roland arrange Trevor's death, all of it captured in crystal-clear audio. This is enough to bring Shaw down, she said when the recording ended. But we need to move fast. If he realizes you've played him, he won't realize anything for several hours. Shaw thinks he controls the situation, which makes him predictable. Roland pulled out a tablet and showed her a map of Seattle with several locations marked. His people took Cassandra from the Bellevue restaurant to an industrial area south of the city. My security team has been tracking Shaw's vehicles using traffic cameras and cell phone data. You have a security team conducting surveillance on a federal target? I have a security team protecting my interests. When those interests align with federal law enforcement, cooperation seems logical. Crawford studied the map. This warehouse complex, it belongs to one of Shaw's shell companies, Meridian Logistics. Shaw acquired it 6 months ago using the same destabilization tactics he used on my companies. Roland highlighted several entries on the screen. 3 security cameras around the perimeter, motion sensors on the main doors, cell phone jammers to prevent communication. How do you know all this? Because I own the security company that installed the system. Shaw hired us through intermediaries, not realizing he was paying me to spy on his own operation. Crawford leaned back in her chair, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You've been planning this. I've been preparing for contingencies. Shaw's move tonight wasn't unexpected. It was inevitable. Roland closed the tablet. But we have a narrow window to act. Shaw expects me to call him in 2 hours with confirmation that I've recanted my testimony. When that call doesn't come, he'll realize he's been played. What do you propose? A simultaneous operation. Your team moves on the warehouse to rescue Cassandra and arrest Shaw's security personnel. My team moves on Shaw himself at his office, where he's waiting for my surrender. Your team? Mr. Ashford, this is a federal investigation. With respect, Agent Crawford, Shaw threatened to kill my wife and demanded I arrange a murder. That makes this personal as well as professional. Roland's voice carried the cold edge of absolute determination. I'm not suggesting vigilante justice. I'm suggesting we coordinate our efforts to ensure Shaw can't escape or destroy evidence while you're focused on the rescue operation. Crawford considered this for several moments. What aren't you telling me? Trevor Blackstone is dead. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Crawford's face went completely still. Explain. Heart attack, 20 minutes ago. Dr. Henley called me on the way here. Roland's expression revealed nothing. Medical complications from his stress-induced cardiac episode. Tragic, but not suspicious, as Shaw requested. You killed him. Trevor was dying anyway. The stress, the legal pressure, the destruction of his life. His heart couldn't handle it. Dr. Henley simply didn't fight as hard as he might have to save him. Crawford stared at him for a long moment. That's murder, Mr. Ashford. That's justice. Trevor destroyed dozens of companies and hundreds of lives over 3 years. He stole $40 million from me personally and was planning to destroy my marriage as collateral damage. Roland leaned forward. But more importantly, his death complicates Shaw's position. Without Trevor alive to testify about the conspiracy, Shaw's entire network becomes vulnerable to federal prosecution. How so? Trevor was the only person who could identify all the other inside agents Shaw has placed in target companies. With him dead, those agents are now loose ends. People who can implicate Shaw, but whom Shaw can no longer protect through Trevor's testimony. Crawford's phone buzzed. She answered on speaker. Crawford here. Agent Crawford, this is Dr. Henley at Swedish Medical Center. I need to report a suspicious death. Trevor Blackstone died of cardiac arrest 30 minutes ago, but there are some irregularities in his medical chart that concern me. Crawford's eyes never left Roland's face. What kind of irregularities? Someone altered his medication schedule without authorization. The drugs that were administered could have accelerated his heart failure, but they would be nearly impossible to detect in a standard autopsy. Dr. Henley, Roland said calmly. This is Roland Ashford. We met last year when you treated my charity foundation's medical clinic. Mr. Ashford? I'm confused. Agent Crawford, why is he? Dr. Henley, Crawford interrupted. I need you to secure Trevor Blackstone's medical records immediately. Federal agents will be there within the hour to collect them. After ending the call, Crawford turned back to Roland. You're under arrest for... No, Roland said quietly. I'm not. He pulled out another recording device and pressed play. Shaw's voice filled the room. Trevor needs to disappear permanently. Heart attack, medical complications, tragic but not suspicious. Dr. Henley has been very cooperative so far, but we need to ensure his continued silence. Shaw ordered Trevor's death, Roland continued. I simply ensured that order was carried out in a way that would provide evidence of his criminal conspiracy. Dr. Henley will testify that Shaw's people have been pressuring him for weeks to accommodate Trevor's medical needs. Crawford sat back, her mind clearly racing through the legal implications. This entire conversation has been designed to manipulate me into taking specific actions. This entire conversation has been designed to give you the evidence you need to dismantle Shaw's organization and rescue my wife. Roland stood up. The question is, are you more interested in prosecuting me for methods or Shaw for crimes? Crawford's phone rang again. This time, she answered without putting it on speaker, but Roland could hear enough to understand. Shaw's warehouse was being evacuated, and multiple vehicles were leaving the industrial complex. He's moving her, Crawford said after hanging up. Then we're out of time. Roland headed for the door. My security team is positioned to intercept those vehicles. Your agents can arrest Shaw and secure the warehouse evidence. But we need to move now, before Shaw realizes his entire operation has been compromised. As they rushed toward the elevator, Crawford grabbed Roland's arm. If this goes wrong, if your wife dies because of your games, then I'll have learned the final lesson about trusting people, Roland replied. But Shaw will still be in federal prison, his network will still be destroyed, and justice will still be served. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped inside together, federal agent and criminal mastermind, united in purpose if not in method. Outside, Seattle's winter night was about to become much more dangerous. Chapter 7. The Endgame. The warehouse district south of Seattle was a maze of industrial buildings and empty lots, perfect terrain for what Miranda called controlled chaos. Roland's security team had positioned themselves at 6 different points around the complex, cutting off all escape routes while maintaining sight lines for federal surveillance. Roland sat in the passenger seat of Miranda's tactical van, watching thermal imaging displays that showed 17 people moving through the warehouse where Cassandra was being held. Shaw's security team was preparing to evacuate, but they didn't know their escape routes had been compromised. FBI units are in position, Miranda reported through her headset. Agent Crawford's team has the main building surrounded. Shaw's still in his office downtown. Apparently, he thinks he's controlling this situation remotely. Roland's phone buzzed with a text from Shaw. Status report. Need confirmation of FBI contact within 15 minutes or consequences begin. Roland typed back. Crawford convinced. Recanting testimony tomorrow. Need more time to arrange Trevor's situation. The response was immediate. Good. Your wife will be released once Trevor is dead and federal investigation is closed. Roland smiled grimly and showed the text to Miranda. He's still convinced he's in charge. That's about to change, she replied, pressing her finger to her earpiece. All units, we have movement. Multiple vehicles starting engines. Through the van's bulletproof windows, Roland could see the warehouse complex beginning to stir. Lights came on in several buildings, and the distant sound of engines echoed through the night air. His phone rang. Agent Crawford. We're moving in 30 seconds, she said without preamble. My team takes the main building where your wife is being held. Your people intercept the escape vehicles. Clean and simple. Understood. What about Shaw? Second team is moving on his office building now. He's trapped on the 62nd floor with nowhere to run. Roland felt a moment of satisfaction, followed immediately by concern. That's too easy. Shaw didn't survive 30 years in business by being predictable. What do you mean? Before Roland could answer, Miranda's voice crackled through the comm system. We have a problem. Thermal imaging shows the main building is empty. The heat signatures we've been tracking are artificial, probably space heaters arranged to mimic human movement. Where is she? Roland demanded. Miranda's fingers flew over her keyboard, pulling up traffic camera feeds and cell phone tower data. I'm checking, got it. 3 vehicles left the complex 20 minutes ago, before we arrived. They're not evacuating now. They evacuated hours ago. Roland's blood turned to ice. Shaw played us. Agent Crawford's voice came through the phone, tense with realization. Our team at Shaw's office reports the same thing. The building appears occupied, but it's just security guards on their normal rounds. Shaw isn't there. Then where the hell is he? Miranda looked up from her screens, her face pale. Roland, I'm tracking the vehicles that left the warehouse. They didn't go to another safe house. Where? Your house. They went to your house. Roland felt the world tilt around him. That's impossible. Security would have. Your security system was disabled 40 minutes ago. Someone with administrative access shut it down remotely. The pieces clicked together in Roland's mind with sickening clarity. Trevor. Before he died, he gave Shaw the access codes to my security system. His phone rang. Shaw's number. Hello, Roland. Shaw's voice was calm. almost cheerful. I trust you're enjoying your wild goose chase. Where is my wife? Safe and sound in your own home. Specifically, your study, where we've been having a fascinating conversation about your business practices. Roland closed his eyes, forcing himself to think clearly. What do you want? I want you to come home, Roland. Alone. No security team, no federal agents, no recording devices. Just you, walking through your front door like the domesticated husband you used to be. And if I refuse? Then your wife dies, and I release evidence that will implicate you in Trevor's murder, corporate fraud, and conspiracy to commit federal crimes. Your business empire collapses, your reputation is destroyed, and you spend the rest of your life in federal prison. You're bluffing about the evidence. Am I? Your wife has been very chatty about your recent activities. The shell companies, the hired investigators, the mysterious Dr. Henley who's been so helpful with medical emergencies. Shaw's laugh was like grinding metal. She's actually quite proud of how ruthless you've become. Says it reminds her of the man she married. Roland felt something cold and final settle in his chest. You made one mistake, Shaw. Oh, what's that? You assumed I still care whether she lives or dies. The line went silent for several seconds. Excuse me. Cassandra betrayed me. She tried to destroy my life, my business, everything I'd built. She threw money at me and called me a failure. Roland's voice was completely calm. Why would I risk everything to save someone who hates me? Because she's your wife. She's my enemy. Just like Trevor was. Just like you are. Roland smiled into the phone. The difference is, Trevor is dead, and soon you will be too. You're bluffing. No one is that cold. Ask Trevor. Oh wait, you can't. Shaw's voice took on a desperate edge. I'll kill her. I'll kill her right now if you don't. Go ahead, Roland interrupted. You'll be doing me a favor. Cassandra's death makes my divorce much simpler, and her life insurance policy will more than compensate for my legal fees. Miranda stared at him in shock, but Roland held up a finger, signaling her to stay quiet. You're insane, Shaw whispered. I'm practical. You see, Shaw, you made the same mistake everyone else makes. You assumed I was still the same person who could be controlled through emotional manipulation. But that person died the moment I discovered my wife's betrayal. Roland could hear Shaw breathing heavily through the phone, the sound of a man whose entire plan had just collapsed. Now, Roland continued, let me tell you what's going to happen. Federal agents are going to surround my house within the next 10 minutes. You're going to surrender peacefully, and you're going to spend the rest of your life in federal prison. What happens to Cassandra is entirely up to you. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Roland hung up and turned to Miranda. Get Agent Crawford on the line. Tell her to move on my house immediately. Roland, Miranda said quietly. Did you mean what you just said? About not caring if Cassandra dies? Roland looked out at the empty warehouse complex, thinking about the 7 years he'd spent believing in love, loyalty, and the possibility of trusting another person completely. I meant every word, he said. The man who loved Cassandra Ashford died the night she threw money at me. What Shaw doesn't understand is that he's not negotiating with a husband trying to save his wife. Then what is he negotiating with? Roland's smile was colder than the Seattle winter. A predator who's tired of playing with his food. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. Roland's mansion sat on 3 acres of manicured grounds in Queen and, surrounded by high walls and sophisticated security systems that were now completely useless. Through night vision scopes from 3 blocks away, Roland watched federal agents take positions around his property while Shaw's people remained oblivious inside. Agent Crawford crouched beside him behind an FBI tactical van, studying the house through binoculars. Thermal imaging shows 4 people inside. 2 on the ground floor, 2 in your study on the 2nd level. Cassandra and Shaw in the study, 2 guards downstairs, Roland confirmed. Standard kidnapping protocol. Keep the hostage with the decision-maker. Post sentries to watch for rescue attempts. How do you want to handle this? Roland pulled out his phone and showed Crawford a detailed floor plan of his house. There's a service tunnel that connects the basement to the wine cellar. It was installed by the previous owner for Prohibition-era smuggling. Shaw's people won't know about it because it's not on any official blueprints. You want to go in through the tunnel? I want you to create a distraction at the front door while I go in through the tunnel. Shaw expects either a SWAT assault or a negotiated surrender. He won't expect me to simply walk into my own study. Crawford studied his face in the dim light. This isn't about rescuing your wife, is it? No, Roland said quietly. It's about finishing what Shaw started. 20 minutes later, Roland emerged from the wine cellar into the darkened kitchen of his own home. The house felt different, violated, contaminated by the presence of people who didn't belong there. He could hear voices from the living room where Shaw's guards were positioned, and the faint sound of conversation from his study above. Moving with the silence he'd learned during years of navigating foster homes, where making noise brought unwanted attention, Roland climbed the servants' stairs to the second floor. The study door was closed, but he could hear Shaw's voice clearly. Remarkable how quickly people's loyalties shift when their survival is threatened. Your husband, for instance, he seemed genuinely attached to you until tonight. Roland doesn't give up on people. Cassandra's voice was defiant but shaky. He's not like you, isn't he? Let me play you something interesting. Through the door, Roland heard his own voice. She's my enemy. Just like Trevor was. Just like you are. Cassandra's gasp was audible even through the heavy wooden door. You see, Shaw continued, your husband has become exactly what I am. A man who values survival over sentiment. The difference is that I've been honest about it for 30 years, while he's just discovered his true nature. Roland tested the door handle. Unlocked. Shaw was confident in his position, surrounded by guards with his hostage secured. The kind of overconfidence that created opportunities. He doesn't mean it, Cassandra whispered. He's just trying to protect me. Is he? Then why hasn't he called back? Why haven't federal agents surrounded the house? Why am I receiving reports that he's withdrawn to a safe distance to wait for the outcome? Roland smiled grimly. Shaw's intelligence was flawed. The reports were false, fed through channels Roland had compromised months ago. Shaw thought he was monitoring Roland's actions, but he was actually seeing what Roland wanted him to see. The door opened silently on well-oiled hinges. Roland's study looked exactly as he'd left it, except for the two people sitting across from each other at his desk. Shaw sat in Roland's chair, relaxed and confident, while Cassandra sat in the guest chair with her hands zip-tied to the armrests. Neither of them noticed Roland standing in the doorway. The truth, Shaw was saying, is that your husband has realized what you discovered months ago, that sentiment is weakness. You married him for his money and status. He built his fortune by crushing competitors. Neither of you has room for genuine emotion. That's not true, Cassandra said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? You threw money at him on Christmas and called him a failure. You've been planning his destruction for over a year. You told me yourself that he disgusts you, that his need for loyalty and trust makes him pathetic. Roland stepped into the room. She told you correctly. Both Shaw and Cassandra spun toward him, Shaw reaching for a gun that Roland could see on the desk. I wouldn't, Roland said calmly. The federal agents outside have been waiting for you to make a threatening gesture. Shaw's hand froze halfway to the weapon. How did you? The house is surrounded by agents who've been in position for 20 minutes. Your guards downstairs are already in custody. The only reason you're still breathing is because I asked Agent Crawford to let me speak with you first. Cassandra stared at him with a mixture of hope and terror. Roland? You came. I came to finish this, Roland interrupted, not looking at her. Shaw, you made several critical errors tonight. Such as, you assumed I was motivated by the same weaknesses that control most people. Love, fear, guilt. Roland moved closer to the desk, his movements deliberate and controlled. You never considered that some people are motivated by something much more dangerous, which is justice. Roland reached into his jacket and pulled out a small recording device, setting it on the desk between them. Trevor Blackstone's final confession, recorded 3 hours before he died. Names, dates, bank account numbers, the location of evidence you thought was destroyed. Everything. Shaw's face went pale. That's impossible. Trevor was loyal. Trevor was dying and wanted to ensure his daughter would be provided for. I offered him a trust fund in exchange for his cooperation. Roland smiled coldly. Amazing how quickly people's loyalties shift when their survival is threatened. You're lying. Roland pressed play on the device. Trevor's weak but clear voice filled the room. Hamilton Shaw recruited me in 2019 to infiltrate and destabilize target companies for acquisition. The network includes at least 30 other agents and companies across the Pacific Northwest. Evidence is stored in Safety Deposit Box 247 at First National Bank, registered under the name David Morrison. Shaw lunged for his gun, But Roland was faster. Years of surviving dangerous situations had taught him to anticipate violence, and he caught Shaw's wrist before the man could reach the weapon. Federal agents. Crawford's voice echoed through the house as footsteps pounded up the stairs. Drop your weapons and get on the ground. Shaw struggled against Roland's grip, desperation making him stronger than his age suggested. You don't understand. If I go down, I take dozens of people with me. Judges, politicians, business leaders. Good, Roland said, applying pressure to Shaw's wrist until the man cried out. The more corruption you expose, the cleaner the system becomes. The study door burst open as federal agents flooded in, weapons drawn. Agent Crawford took in the scene, Roland restraining Shaw while Cassandra sat tied to her chair and began barking orders to her team. As agents secured Shaw and cut Cassandra's restraints, Roland walked to the window overlooking his grounds. Emergency vehicles filled his driveway, their flashing lights painting the winter night in reds and blues. Roland, Cassandra's voice was tentative as she approached him. I heard what you said on the phone, but I know you didn't mean it. You came for me. Roland turned to face her, and she stepped back at the cold emptiness in his eyes. I came to end this, he said quietly. You just happened to be here. What do you mean? I mean our marriage is over, Cassandra. Has been since the night you threw money at me. Roland gestured toward Agent Crawford, who was supervising Shaw's arrest. Agent Crawford will need your statement about Shaw's threats and actions tonight. After that, you're free to go. Go where? This is my home. This is my house. You lost the right to call it home when you decided to destroy our marriage. Roland walked past her toward the door. Your belongings are already packed. They'll be delivered to whatever address you provide my attorney. Roland, please. I made mistakes, but we can work through this. He stopped in the doorway without turning around. Some mistakes are unforgivable, Cassandra. Betraying someone who loved you completely is one of them. As federal agents led Shaw away in handcuffs and paramedics checked Cassandra for injuries, Roland descended the stairs of his empty house. The violation of his sanctuary was complete. Shaw's presence had contaminated the last place where he'd felt safe. Outside, Agent Crawford intercepted him as he walked toward his car. Where are you going? She asked. Away, Roland replied. This house is no longer my home. This city is no longer my sanctuary. Time to start over somewhere new. What about your business empire? Your holdings here? Roland looked back at the mansion where he'd spent 7 years believing in love and loyalty. Sell it all. Liquidate everything. I'll start fresh somewhere that doesn't remind me of my failures. Your failures? Roland, you just exposed the largest corporate espionage network in Pacific Northwest history. You're a hero. Roland smiled sadly. Heroes save people, Agent Crawford. All I did was destroy my enemies. There's a difference. As he drove away from the mansion for the last time, Roland felt something he hadn't experienced in months: freedom. The man who had loved Cassandra Ashford was truly dead now, and the man who had replaced him was unencumbered by trust, loyalty, or the naive belief that people were fundamentally good. He was finally free to become exactly what the world had taught him to be: a predator who never forgave and never forgot. Chapter 9. Phoenix Rising. 6 months later, Roland stood on the deck of his new home overlooking Monterey Bay, watching the Pacific waves crash against the rocky coastline. The California mansion was smaller than his Seattle home, but more defensible, situated on a cliff with only one access road and a state-of-the-art security system designed by military contractors. He'd liquidated his entire Seattle empire for $340 million, keeping only the shell companies that were untraceable to his previous identity. In California, he was Robert Cross, venture capitalist and technology investor, a man with no past and unlimited potential for the future. His phone buzzed with the morning briefing from Miranda, who had relocated to San Francisco to oversee his new operations. Shaw's trial had begun 3 weeks ago, with federal prosecutors calling it the largest corporate espionage case in American history. 27 executives had been arrested, 6 judges were under investigation, and the economic damage was estimated at over $2 billion. Trevor Blackstone was officially listed as the conspiracy's first victim, a dedicated employee who had discovered the network and been murdered for his honesty. Only Roland, Miranda, and Dr. Henley knew the truth, and Dr. Henley had been relocated to a private practice in Switzerland with a very generous severance package. The Seattle media had portrayed Roland as a hero, the businessman who had risked everything to expose corruption and save his kidnapped wife. That narrative suited him perfectly, as it obscured his true nature behind a facade of moral righteousness. A knock at his door interrupted his morning reflection. Miranda entered carrying a tablet and wearing the expression she reserved for particularly interesting developments. 3 items, she said without preamble. Shaw's organization had deeper roots than we thought. Our investigation has uncovered similar networks in Portland, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. The FBI wants to hire you as a consultant to help expose them. Roland smiled. Becoming a government contractor does appeal to me. What's the second item? Cassandra filed for bankruptcy last week. Turns out her divorce attorney was charging premium rates for a case he knew was unwinnable. She's lost the 4-season suite, her credit cards are maxed out, and she's been staying at a women's shelter in Seattle. Unfortunate. And the third item? Miranda hesitated. She's pregnant. Roland set down his coffee cup and turned to face her fully. Explain. Medical records indicate she's 12 weeks along. Timing suggests Trevor was the father, which means the child has no legitimate claim on your estate even if she were still legally your wife. Which she isn't. Divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago. The prenup held completely. She received exactly nothing. Roland walked to the window, processing this information. Cassandra pregnant with Trevor's child, destitute and alone, raising the offspring of 2 people who had tried to destroy him. Does she know we know? Unclear. She's been trying to contact you through various intermediaries, lawyers, mutual acquaintances, even a private investigator. All requests have been blocked per your instructions. Good. Maintain that isolation. Roland, Miranda said carefully, there's something else. The child, regardless of paternity, it's innocent of its parents' crimes. Roland considered this for several moments. Some men might feel pity for an unborn child. Some men might see an opportunity for redemption, a chance to break the cycle of betrayal and revenge. Roland was not one of those men. The child is Cassandra's problem, he said finally. She made choices that led to this situation. She can live with the consequences. And if she contacts you directly, shows up here, then you'll remind her that I don't negotiate with people who have betrayed me. Once. Miranda nodded and made notes on her tablet. The FBI consultation contract is quite lucrative. $50 million over 3 years to help identify and expose corporate espionage networks. Accept it, but make sure our role remains advisory. I have no interest in becoming a public figure. Understood. There's one more thing, a personal matter. Roland raised an eyebrow. I've been approached by several headhunters about opportunities in private security and corporate intelligence. Premium positions with Fortune 500 companies. You're leaving? I'm asking if you want me to stay. Working for you has been educational, but it's also made me complicit in actions that might not align with my long-term career goals. Roland studied her face, recognizing the careful neutrality that meant she'd already made her decision. Miranda had been loyal, efficient, and discreet, but she was also fundamentally moral in a way that would eventually conflict with his methods. Take the best offer, he said. I'll provide references that will ensure you get whatever position you want. Just like that. Just like that. Loyalty that's maintained through guilt or obligation isn't really loyalty at all. You've served me well, Miranda. You deserve to move on to something that doesn't compromise your principles. After she left, Roland returned to the deck overlooking the bay. The morning fog was lifting, revealing container ships heading toward the port of Oakland. Each ship represented commerce, competition, opportunities for profit and control. His phone rang. The number wasn't familiar, but the area code was Seattle. Hello, Roland. Cassandra's voice was older, more fragile than he remembered. Please don't hang up. Roland almost ended the call immediately, then decided he was curious about what desperation sounded like in someone who had once thrown money at him. You have 1 minute. I'm pregnant. The words came out in a rush. I know what you're thinking, but there's a chance, a possibility, that it's yours, not Trevor's. The timing is impossible, Roland interrupted. We haven't been intimate in 8 months, Cassandra. Basic biology rules out my paternity. Silence stretched between them before she spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. I have nothing, Roland. No money, no home, no family. I made terrible mistakes, but this baby didn't choose its parents. Neither did I, Roland replied. Neither did the dozens of other children whose parents were destroyed by Trevor's network. Why should your child receive mercy that others didn't? Because you're not them. Because you're better than this. Roland laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. No, Cassandra. I'm exactly what you and Trevor taught me to be. You wanted to see me become ruthless and unforgiving? Congratulations. Mission accomplished. Roland, please. Good luck with your new life, he said, and hung up. He blocked the number immediately, then called his attorney to ensure that any future contact attempts would be filtered through legal channels. Standing on his deck overlooking the Pacific, Roland felt the final piece of his transformation settle into place. The man who had once believed in love, trust, and redemption was truly dead. In his place stood someone harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who understood that the world was divided into predators and prey, and had chosen his side accordingly. The California sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the morning fog. Roland smiled and went inside to begin his new life, leaving the past to drown in the waves below. Some stories end with forgiveness. Some end with redemption. This one ended with evolution. Roland Ashford had learned the most valuable lesson of all. In a world built on betrayal, the only way to survive was to become someone who could never be betrayed again. And he had succeeded perfectly. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.